All right, class. Today we are going to build a little walking simulator. We've dealt with objects and various other things. So today we're going to basically utilize some of that to create a program that allows us to walk around. So just to show you what this looks like, this is essentially what the end result is going to be. I've created a basic 2 by 2 array here. And I can go north, south, east, west, depending. And actually the whole list here is just something we randomly set up in class. So you'll see I've got quite a lot of things. As I move back and forth, you see the X moves back and forth. If I decide to exit, well, the whole program ends. So essentially we're just making a little walking simulator with a map. So we can actually see what's going on. Now the map itself is going to be its own little object. So we start off, and these names and everything can be anything you want, but we just randomly, thanks to the news and various other things, chose random stuff. So first and foremost, we're going to create a class map. And of course you need a constructor for that. So a map is going to be basically the map that we're moving around on. Now, I'm doing this a little more hard-coded wise. It would be really better to make it a little more generic. That way I could make multiple maps that are different. I did not do that here just for the sake of time. And to make it a little more generic would also make it somewhat more difficult to follow. But in general, what you'd want to do is maybe read information from a file and create the arrays or lists based on that. So I've got 3 lists here. The first one is the map, the board, and you'll see we have an X in the first room and the others are just blank. And then we have room names and then a description for each of the room. And there's the first description, comma, there's the second description. And it goes a good ways over there, comma. And then we come down to room 3 and then room 4. So if I zoom out, so you can kind of get a full look of that, that's what it is. So those are our descriptors here. And again, the better way to do this would be to, read in a file or read in 3 lists and assign them. Then this room could be whatever I wanted it to be. The way I've done it now is whatever map I make is always going to be this. But again, that's not generally how I would want to do it, but it would be a little more complicated for what we're doing anyway. We have the move function, which is next. Moves the X from room to room. Using NSWE as our directional. You could have up and down if you wanted to as well, but this is actually all based off of an old game, set of games. There used to be online games called MUDs, or multi-user dungeons, and they were all text-based. You would move around with the keyboard in for north, south for south, up and down, and you could fight monsters and other people in those particular text-based games. You have to type in all the commands. They might still be around, I'm not sure actually. It's been years since I've even thought about them. But that's what this is somewhat based on. Now, our move allows us to move around. But before we get to our move, I'm going to scroll down and let's go ahead and do the display room portion of this first. Let's see, I guess that would be the end of display room. This would be what I would build next, simply because we want to display the map itself. So before we even get the move working, this will be like number 2 to build. So as you can see, we've got this function, of course, is inside this class still. So whenever we tell it to display the room, it's going to display the name, and then the map's going to display just like you saw earlier. Now I have some if statements here that check, if room 00 equals an X, then print that room name, print that room description. If room 01 equals this, and print that room name description. And again, I hard-coded this. Ideally, I would prefer to probably have a little loop here that would loop through, and, you know, essentially it would check, you know, 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, whatever the x, y max is of this array is. It'll just go through and find whichever x it is and just print. You can actually do this with 2 loops and then just the same prints with just x and y here. And you could essentially just, you know, no matter how big this map gets, it would still print the descriptions and everything. The only issue would be here, probably. You would need 2 for loops, probably. You need a print that would print going across, and then another print line or a /n that would move us down to the next and print those going across. But all that's entirely doable. This entire display room could be done in literally, I guess, about 6 or 7 lines of code. No matter how big the room is, it would still be 6 or 7 lines of code if you did it the most efficient way possible. Now, this, of course, is our display room. And again, it displays the information that you saw. So if we take a look at my stuff here, we're in the animal room. It displays the room name with an underscore, or these little dashes, the room description, which you see here. And then we have a little input here that comes next after that, displaying our stuff, displaying our map. We move north, and then it changes our direction. Now, once we can display this, then we want to be able to move. And that's where the next function comes in. The first things first, if we type in exit, that means essentially the game's over. The program ends. So we need to check that first. I'm going to pass a direction, which is going to be that NESW, north, east, southwest. And we'll check these one room at a time. If room 0 equals X, then I have to check if my direction is north, south, you know, east, west. And if it is, then I will move in those directions. Now, it's always a good idea to, like when you create this, draw out a little map. This is location 0, 0, this is location 0, 1. This is location 1, 0, this is location 1, 1. Like that. And then you can take a look. I'm in room 0, 0, and I try to go north. Well, that's here. I can't. If I try to go south, that brings me down to 1, 0. So you'll see I change, you move south, and I change the location of my axis. Now if I try to go west, well, I can't. There's nothing west. East puts me in 0, 1. So you see I'll change that. Now this is where essentially, you know, I would end up doing a lot of copying and pasting. But you have to be very, very careful with this because, you know, it's very easy to forget to change a number or to, you know, malfunction. You have to basically do this one at a time and check and make sure it works. You know, I would go here and I would check my map and see, oh, well, does this allow me to go to south? Does it allow me to go to west? Do I go north? And I would adjust accordingly. There's only 4 rooms, so I only have to adjust 4 rooms here, as you can see. I'll pause for just a minute so you can see room 3 and room 4. There we go. And that's the end. And if you type in something else, that's not, you know, something malfunctioned somewhere. And that's where that would come into play. So again, one more time, this just allows us to move. If we are in this room, we check which direction we go, and we go that way. Now, is there a better way than hard coding all this? Because if I had 10 rooms, or I didn't know how many rooms I had, I would not be able to do this. If I was reading it in from a file, I would we've made a map here, right? I would also make, instead of, you know, making 3 little arrays here, or 3 little, in this case, lists, I would make a list of lists, or a list of rooms, I should say. So each one of these would be a room, and that room would contain, you know, the name, the description, whatever information each room needed to be. If I did it that way, I could also include a pointer that points to the next room. You could probably do it something similar to that, and then you could make it however big you needed it to be, and you wouldn't really have to worry. Most of this right here would just be a simple, you typed in north, well, in this room, can I go north? If I can, then you just move a pointer and now you're in a different room. If you can't, well, you basically would condense all this down to 3 lines of code. Well, not 3, maybe 10 at most to do that. Of course, I got way more than 10 because I'm hard coding each and every room, but it works for what we need. For something larger, I could use something a little less annoyingly long. So now we've got our display room, and I'm going to scroll on down. This is outside. We've ended our class. So now I have a little main function, and main just is what runs. This is where most of my code is going to end up going. So I make a level called map clown house, and when I make it, I just simply, pass the name. That's all that's going to happen up here in this function. It just passes the name and it creates the clown house. Now I could alternatively, like I said, maybe set, several ifs. If I give a certain name, then assign these values. That would probably be one way I could do it, this way. But the other way I already told you would be probably the best way. Now, I make a user input, and while that's not exit, this loop will keep going. It's going to display the room and ask me to type in something. And when I type something in, I'm just going to say the level move, whatever direction I wanted to go in. And if you prefer this to be the word direction, that's fine too. We just make a slight change here. It makes more sense. And once I run, I can move around. Or I can crash because, I didn't change that one place. Here. Direction. There we go. And then I can go, east, east, south. Oh. We're not working. Exit. Control C. Well, let's see why I'm not working real quick. I did make some changes to it. So, because user input was not changed. There we go. Now I've changed all of them to direction. That's 4 spots because I did pay attention. And I'll run. And now I should be able to, north, south, east, west it. There we go. Like so. Pretty simple. Ability to move around a little text-based map. Nothing too fancy. We talked a little bit about how we could do better with this. And the reason I don't write out the code for doing better is because I want the class to think about it and attempt it on their own. Practice trying to do better than what we got. When we get to the projects, then we'll see about some shortcuts you could take. But that is basically our walkabout program in a nutshell.